This is one of over 500 assisted PNF stretching demonstrations that can be found as part of my 80 Days to Your Dream Body course, which is available to my channel members. If you'd like to see all of them, then consider becoming a member. But for right now, let's get our stretch on. And while we're resting, we are going to continue with our assisted PNF stretching demonstration at the glenohumeral joint. And for this stretch, we are going to be emphasizing the sternal attachment of the pectoralis major at 90 degrees of coronal abduction, abduction away from the midline. At 90 degrees of coronal abduction, the pectoralis major is going to be responsible for horizontal shoulder abduction, bringing the arm toward the midline, and medial rotation. So we're going to reverse that by going into horizontal shoulder abduction and lateral rotation. We have a couple of different hand options that are available to us. First, we want to take the patient into coronal abduction of 90 degrees by getting that humerus perpendicular to the spine or the axial body. And then we have a couple of different options with regard to our hand positioning. Number one, first we want to take them into a little bit of lateral rotation. And then we can either go and we can cup the distal, the radius and ulna and sandwich their humerus against our forearm. And then with our stabilizing hand, we could stabilize at the scapula. And from here, we could go ahead and we could traction. We could take them into horizontal shoulder abduction by leaning backward. And we could take them into lateral shoulder rotation by rotating our body outward. This is going to be fine if you have a very small or weak patient. For me personally, though, I would prefer to get my body involved, especially if I'm working on a rather large, strong patient. So if I have an NFL player, a power lifter, or if I'm just treating somebody who's very, very large and strong, I'll take the greater trochanter of my femur, sandwich it up against the patient's scapula, and then I will go elbow to elbow with the patient, lock my hand onto my bicep, and then lock the other hand at the distal radius and ulna. Then from here, I'm going to traction to create some space. I'm going to take them into lateral rotation by rotating away from their body. And then I'm going to take them into horizontal shoulder abduction by moving and doing a side bend away from their body. Now, from this position right over here, it's very, very comfortable for me. I'm using only my body's leverage. I'm not using any muscle. So it's going to be a lot more effective. And what I would instruct the patient to do is first, we're going to isolate those two movements before we integrate them together. So first, I'm going to instruct the patient to inhale and bring your palm forward. They're going to inhale, go into medial shoulder rotation. As they exhale and relax, I'm going to traction and stand up to create some space and take them deeper into lateral shoulder rotation. Then I'm going to instruct the patient to inhale and give me a pec fly. They're going to inhale, go into horizontal shoulder adduction. As they exhale and relax, I'm going to traction to create some space and take them deep into horizontal shoulder abduction. And now we've isolated the movements. I'm going to integrate them together and combine them. So I'm going to instruct the patient to inhale, and I want you to simultaneously bring your forearm forward and give me a pec fly. They're going to inhale and simultaneously go into medial shoulder rotation with horizontal shoulder adduction. And as they exhale and relax, I'm going to stand up to traction and create some space and simultaneously take them deep into lateral shoulder rotation with horizontal shoulder abduction. When we are focusing on both taking the patient to lateral rotation and horizontal shoulder abduction at 90 degrees of coronal abduction, once again, we're going to be emphasizing the sternal attachment of the pectoralis major. And with the sternal attachment in this position at 90 degrees, we're really going to be emphasizing the intermediate fibers, or those horizontally oriented fibers of the sternal attachment of the pectoralis major. If we wanted to get more into the superior fibers, we would go down to about 60 degrees of coronal abduction. And if we wanted to target the inferior fibers, we'd go higher up to around 120 degrees of coronal abduction. But at 90 degrees, we're targeting and emphasizing those intermediate fibers of the sternal attachment of the pectoralis major. Some other muscles that we will be targeting in this particular variation is we are going to be getting a decent amount of stretch in the anterior deltoid. Anterior deltoid, it is a flexor medial rotator and an abductor. However, when we are at 90 degrees of coronal abduction, now it is a horizontal shoulder adductor. So we're targeting two of its actions by going into abduction with lateral shoulder rotation. Some other muscles, we will be getting the coracobrachialis in this position, and we're going to be indirectly targeting the long head of the biceps brachii. The long head of the biceps brachii, it is not a horizontal shoulder adductor. However, it does cross the shoulder anteriorly. So because we're going to be getting some tension over the anterior capsule of the shoulder joint, we are going to be indirectly targeting the long head of the biceps brachii. And then a couple of other muscles, we will be getting the subscapularis, because the subscapularis is a medial shoulder rotator. And two other medial shoulder rotators are going to be the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. The latissimus dorsi and teres major, we're not going to be getting a whole lot of stretch in this particular position because they are both coronal adductors. They bring the arm down toward the midline. So at 90 degrees, we're getting a decent amount of tension, but not a whole lot. The more into abduction that we go, the more we'll start getting into the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. But at 90 degrees of coronal shoulder abduction, when we are taking a patient into horizontal shoulder abduction with lateral rotation, the main emphasis, once again, is going to be on the intermediate fibers of the sternal attachment of the pectoralis major. During the next rest period, I'm going to show you how to get nice and deep into the anterior deltoid. But for right now, our rest period is up. Time for set number 3. That was just a tiny taste of what can be found in my members only section. If you enjoyed it, become a member for only $5 a month to get access to hundreds of member only videos.